So Baruch Hashem, we saw each other a while ago, and I'm happy to be back again. This morning I just gave a shiur to another Yarchei Kallah, a group of 50 American balabatim that came to learn, and I gave a shiur there on Groma and Garmi Benazikin. So it's just so wonderful, as I said yesterday, this phenomena of American balabatim coming to learn be'iyun, but nothing compares to this. There were about 40, 50 balabatim there, wonderful balabatim, but nothing. This is the real thing. And as I said many times, this is like a real yeshiva. The only difference is all the white I see here, and in the yeshivas and in kodelim there is more black. Baruch Hashem. So today she is an orev, and this is a sugya atzumo. And when I looked in our sefer, there was very little of what I expect to speak about today. But I'm sure that in the coming days you will get far more familiar in the sugya of orev. So the first part of today's shiur would be an introduction to the concept of orev, and then some halacha l'maisa questions I dealt with throughout the years, which would be very interesting, and some piskei halacha, some of them that are in Shalas Teshuvas Minchas Osher. So we start off with the sugya in Bava Basra Ayin Gimel, and I think I saw it on page 62 in our kuntres, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, but I think I did see just the Gemara in Bava Basra. Page 40. The Rit was page 64, but page 40. Or actually 41. So when we speak about the Sugya of Orev, most people will start in Kedushin Dav Zayin. Ten monele ploini veskadishani lacho mikudeshes midin orev. That is a secondary sugya, but more people learn the beginning of Kedushin than the end of Bava Basra. That's just a fact. Because till you reach the end of Bava Basra, you have a lot of work to do. So far more people learn Kedushin Dav Zayin. But the real sugya is in Bava Basra. Let's have a look at the Gemara. So the Gemara Bava Basra Kuf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis. Omer Rav Huna. It's the middle of the page. Page 41 in our kuntras. Menayen la orev de mishtabeid. Dichsiv onoichi arveno miyodi tivaksheno. And this is fascinating. The orev of Yehuda, when he promises his great father Yankov, don't be afraid. I take responsibility. This has nothing to do with monetary arvis. It's not about money. But nevertheless, this is the fundamental source of arvis. At another opportunity, I have an amazing shiur dealing with arvis in mitzvahs and averis, kol yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh, and monetary arvis. Are they the same concept or not? So the Ritvan Rosh Hashanah Daf Chof Tes and the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Chof Tes says Afal Pi Sheyotzo Moitzi Acherim Yedei Choyvoson. And the Ritva writes Kol Yisrael Keguf Achad Ve'Ka'orav HaPoreach Choyvoi Shel Chaveiroi. So the Ritva draws a comparison between what the Gemara says Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh in mitzvahs to monetary arvis. But this is number 3. Yehuda's arvis is promising his father, trust me, I will bring Binyamin back home. And this is the source for arvis. But then the Gemara has a question. Maskal Forav Chizda, Kablonasi, Nuoisa Vani Yeshavenai, Elam Ritzak Mahocha. And the Gemara brings another posik from Mishlei. And then the Gemara asks, Orav de Mishtabed Machloikes Rebbe Yehuda v'Rebbe Yosi, Asmachta Kanya, Asmachta Lo Kanya. What is Asmachta? Asmachta is when a person takes upon himself any monetary obligation, but there is a question whether he really took it seriously or he relied that it will never come to be. We pasken asmachta lo kanya. And the Gemara argues every orev is an asmachta. The orev promises the lender, if the borrower won't pay, I will stand in his place and I will pay. That's the concept of monetary arvis. But the orev always hopes it will never come to be. He hopes that the borrower will pay. So the Gemara argues that every arvis is an asmachta, so why is it binding? We pasken asmachta lo kanya. And the Gemara says, it's not an asmachta. And why? Behahi hanoah. So the Gemara says, Elo meravashi, behahi hanoah dekum mehemen le, gome v'mishabed nafshei. The orev is thrilled that the lender trusts him. You don't trust just anyone. If the lender is willing to give money because he feels that the orev is trustworthy and reliable, that's to the benefit of the orev. And therefore, it is not an asmachta. And there is a huge question in the Rishonim. What is the basis of the shiabud of a orev? The Rambam, and this Rambam is a gewaldige chiddush. Hilches Mechira, Perek Yud Aleph, Halacha Tezvav. I doubt it's in our book. I think it is not.
It is in the book. It is in the book.
If Reb Mordechai says no, I assume it's no.
It's here.
We have a machlokes between.
I guarantee it's in the book.
Okay. If you find it, let me know.
We don't make rookie mistakes like that.
Reb Mordechai.
That's the exception which proves the rule.
פרק י"א הלכות הסבב. המחייב עצמו במומן ליחר בלא תנאי כלל, אף על פי שלא היה חייב לכלום, הרי זה חייב, שדבר זה מתונה היא, ואינו אסמכתה. כיצד? הוא אומר לאדם, הביא על האדם שאני חייב על פלוני מונה, או שכוסף לו בשטר. חייב. הויל ואומר בשטר על איזה כמי שברב על האדם. אף על פי ששני המוידם ואדם יודעים שלא היה אצלי כלום, חייב עצמוי. And this is the punchline. כמו שישתבד העורב, וכזה הוירו רויב הגאוינים. So the last line of this Rambam indicates, it's not a halacha pshuta, but that is the ruling of most of the Gaonim. This sugya is beiting subis kuv beis amud aleph, choshe mishpot simen mem. It is what the poskim call odaisa. So a person could create a shiabud. He received nothing in return, but he says, if he's miyached edim and he says ani chayiv, he's chayiv, like a orev. So the Rambam seems to say that the basis of the shiabud of a orev is just words. I obligate myself to pay to the lender if the borrower will not pay, and that is his chiyuv. The Rambam is a das yochid. But obviously, the Rambam's interpretation of the Gemara is Menayin la'orev shemishtabed unoichi arveno. And when the Gemara says, Rav Ashi bi'ahi hanoah, gomer v'mishabed nafshai, that is just to take away the problem of asmachta. But it is not the basis of the chiyuv of orev. The Ritva in Kedushin Daf Zayin has a different opinion. And the Ritva is in our book. I think it's page 61 or close to there. The Ritva is on page 62. And the bottom of the first column, page 62, and that's the Ritva in Kedushin. And that is why if a woman tells a man, it is just like the Orev telling the lender, borrow him money and I will pay. The woman tells the man, 10 mana leploini, ve'eskadesh ani lecho mekudeshes. Afal gav deloimota hanoa leyodei. The Ritva says, we don't mean to say that he has no benefit. Lav lememre deloimota leishova hashum hanoa dim ken b'may mishtabed. Eloima, afal gav deloimota leyodei hanoa samois, shoitzi amalva. He's not getting the money. The borrower is getting the money. Afeloch mishtabed biyahidu motelei b'ma shehilveleze al emunosoi dehanoa b'kol dichta choshev kekesef. So the Ritva says, the basis of arvis is biyahi hanoa gomer v'mishtabed. The order is nehena. He takes kavod and pride in the fact that the lender sees him trustworthy and reliable. And that, I know, is the basis of his shiabud. The Ritva understands the Gemara in Bava Basra. When the Gemara asks, every arvis is a smachta. And the Gemara says, it's not an asmachta bi'ahir noah gova mishabed. And Rav Ashi means not only to deal with the problem of asmachta, but Rav Ashi is a new understanding and a new interpretation of arvis. It has nothing to do with Yehuda and Yaakov. Because Yehuda and Yaakov have nothing to do with money. That's a totally different nature. Yehuda just tells his father, trust me, I will bring Binyamin back home safely. Rav Ashi is a new approach to arvus. And the basis of arvus is B'yahya Noah Gomer v'mishabed nafshei. That is the Ritva. The Rashba in Kedushin Daf Ches seems to have a different approach. And the Rashba says, the borrower is like a shliach of the orev. And when the orev says to the lender, I bear responsibility, give that loan to the borrower. The borrower is a shliach of the orev. And when he gets the money, it is considered as if the orev got the money. And that is the interpretation of arvis. What would be the nafkamina between the Ritva and the Rashba? Zroik mona leyam ve'eshtabed ani lecha. Or a woman tells a man, Zroik mona leyam ve'eskadesh ani lecha. Instead of saying, give that person money, throw it into the ocean. According to the Ritva, it's a valid arvis. Because what is the order of getting in order to be mishtabed? The pride, the hanoah, the benefit, you trust me. And if I say, Zoik mona liyam v'shtabed in lecho, obviously I'm even more trustworthy when I say, lend money to that other person. Because the yam will never give that money back. The ocean doesn't give money back to anyone. So according to the Ritva, mikudeshes, v'mishtabed. According to the Rashba, no. The basis of arvis is, the loiva is a shaliach of the orev. The yam, the ocean, isn't the shliach. He's not zoicha. So according to Rashba, that would not be a valid arvis. According to the Ritva, it would. Rashbam has interpretation number 3, which brings us back to page 40. Bava Basra, Kufayin, Gimalomid Beis, the last line on the page, and that's easy to find. Rashbam, 41 at the bottom of the page. Orev mishtabit belev sholem, v'shlichus de orev ko'ovid malve, ke'ilu hu atzmo hilevo. It's not the borrower that's a shliach of the orev, but the lender. And it is if the orev says, you're my shliach to give money to the borrower. And if I made you a shliach to give money, I bear responsibility to give back that money. So the Rashbam and the Rashba both speak about shlichus, but who is the shliach of the orev? According to Rashbam, the lender is the shliach of the orev, and according to the Rashba and Kiddushin, it is the borrower that's a shliach of the orev. And according to the Ritva, no shlichus at all. The basis of arvis is B'yahi hanua duku mehemin lei. The hanua that I have, that you trust me and you rely on me and you are willing to take money out of your pocket and give it away because you trust me, that is the basis of arvis. So we have three different opinions. And the Rambam would be number 4 in Hilchas Mechira. Number 5 is the Rashba in Kiddushin. I didn't see that in our package. Do we have the Rashba in Kiddushin? The Rashba in Hilchas Kiddushin, which seems to be approach number 5. And this is before we start dealing Aloha Lamaisa in arvis. 89?
Mordechai, you're doing tshuva here.
It'll take a year to learn through this. Well, I'm looking for the Rambam.
You said the Rashba.
No.
Oh, you want the Rambam?
Rambam. I said Rashba? Oh, that was my mistake. Do we have the Rambam in Hilchas Kiddushin? I doubt it. I don't think so.
Probably not.
So the Rambam, when he brings the din in Kiddushin Dav Zayin, 10 moni yiproini v'askadish ani lecho, harezu mikedeshes, and I'm quoting more or less the lashon of the Rambam, shaharei nehenes beretzoino shenasa v'nene ploni biglola. She has hanua because her wish was done. And the recipient of the money will enjoy by her graciousness or her generosity. Nehenes beretzoino shenasa v'nene ploni biglola. It doesn't seem to be the same as the Ritva. The Ritva says, my hanua is, you trust me. The Rashba words it differently. Nehenes beretzoino shenasa v'nene ploni biglala. It doesn't seem to fit in with the Rashba that the borrower is my shliach, nor the Rashbam that the lender is my shliach, nor with the Ritva that my benefit is just that I was found reliable. So that's different. The lashon of the Rambam is nehenes beretzoino shenasa v'nene ploni biglala. And the Rambam doesn't write one extra word. The Rambam, more than any of the Rishonim, were medaktik l'shoinoi. The Rambam doesn't throw extra words. What is the opinion of the Rambam? So let me share with you my pshat, and maybe my pshat would bring all the 4 opinions together. Kinyan kesef or kedusha kesef, does that require that the recipient is koine the kesef? Does it depend on kinyan? I don't even know how to interpret the term kinyan into English. Roughly, it would be acquisition, but I think acquisition is buying. How do we define kinyan, the word kinyan? I don't think it is in other languages, but we could look for it. I don't know where to look, but you know. So we could look forward. How do we term the word kinyan? But my question is, kinyan kesef. When I receive money and I sell the field, when a woman receives money, vihi mikudeshes, is the kinyan necessary? I think not. There is something which is above and beyond kinyan, and that is utilizing the money, eating it up. And that is a ritva in Kedushin of Yutes. A father could tell his little daughter that is a ktano, tzei v'kabli kiddushayich. And a father tells a friend, you're going to give money to my daughter, vehi mikudeshes lecha. And that works. That's a Gaon in Kedushin of Yutes. All the Rishonim ask, but the ktana is not a bas kinyan, and the money isn't hers. So how could that affect Kedushin? She was given money, but she can't be kind of that money, and the money still belongs to the person that gave her money. So how is she Mekadeshes? Neither the father was Zoich that money, nor the Ktano. The Ritva says he gave her food, and she ate that food, and that is why she is Mikudeshes. So what that she ate that food? But she still is not a baskinyan. She wasn't koine that food. So what I understand from the Ritva, if I gave you something and you ate it up, that is far beyond kinyan. All the kinyonim are kiruv hanoah. When you are koine something, it is yours to enjoy. But if I ate up that food, that is above and beyond kinyonim. Then there is no need for kinyan. So what I want to prove is, when a person gave me money and I used up that money, I benefited from that money in a way that it can't come back. That is beyond kinyan. And that's the Rambam. When the Orev tells the lender, give that person money, and the recipient knows that money comes from me, doesn't really come from the lender, because the lender is going to get that money back. I'm responsible. I use that money. So even though I wasn't kind of that money, but I utilized it. I ate it up. So when a woman tells a man, ten mora leploini vaskadish ani lecho, she never was kind of that money. And not according to the Rashba that the loiva is kind of for the Orav b'shlichus. No. But the Orav ate up that money. He didn't literally eat it, but he utilized it. That is as if his money. And that's the Rambam. Nehenes b'retzoyne shenase v'ploini nehena biglala. It is as if I gave that money to the recipient, to the borrower. And therefore, it is as if I received that money. I never touched the money. I didn't see it. But that money was given to the borrower by the lender, to Pliny by the Mekadesh. It is as if I got that money and I ate it up. And that is the Rambam. And maybe neither the Rashbam doesn't really mean Shlichoi Shalodem Kemoisoi, and the Rashba doesn't mean Shlichoi Shalodem Kemoisoi. The Rashbam, the Rashba could be the same as the Rambam. The lender did my will when he gave money to the borrower. The borrower knows that it is from me that he got that money. And the Rambam brings together the Rashba and the Ritva, and maybe they're all the same. The Ritva still has a slightly different touch, because the Ritva says, and that is not exactly what the Rambam is saying. So up to this point, I explained 5 different approaches. What is the basis of arvis? The Ritva. Rashba, the recipient, the borrower is my shliach. Rashbam, the lender is my shliach. The Rambam, which I try to explain to the best of my ability. It is I received that money, I ate it up, I used it, I utilized it when it came from the lender to the borrower, all because I was the one to initiate that. And then the Rambam in Hilchos Mechila, his chayvus. And that is the Rambam in Perik Yud Aleph Hilchos Mechila, unlike the Rambam in Kedushin. We could go on in the sugya for hours, but as an introduction, I will stop right here. And I'm sure in the next day or two, you will hear many shiurim on the Ritva, but I tried to summarize 5 different opinions, and 3 of the 5, to me, could be the same. Rashba, Rashbam, and the Rambam. So this is a brief introduction to the Yesodis of Orev. And now I want to ask a very simple question. Is arvis a mitzvah or an aveira? And this is somewhat perplexing. So I made some notes sitting outside a few minutes because I don't think what I'm going to quote is in our book. Pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Vav. Im orafto l'reacho, takato lezar kapecho. I'm not good in translating. Im orafto l'reacho. If you accepted arvis for a friend, takato lezar kapecho. You gave your hand to a stranger, which does not seem to be a positive connotation. Another posik in Mishlei, which seems to be even more problematic, and that is in Perek Yud Aleph, Ra yaroa ki orev zar, evil or bad, because you took upon yourself arvus to a stranger. And the Gemara in Yevamos Kuf Tes says, La'olam yislachik odam misholosh devorim. Stay away from 3 things. And one of the 3, surprisingly, is arvus. Don't be an orev. And we wonder, isn't it a great mitzvah to be an orev? Why is an orev different than a malva? A person is desperate for a loan. No one is willing to lend the money unless he has an orev. And I volunteer to be an orev. It is only in my schus and by my generosity that he is going to get that loan. So what could be bad about arvis? And why do Chazal say, both in Bavli and in Yerushalmi, don't do it? And why not? Is there any difference between a malva and an orev? Isn't it a great chesed? So if I would ask you intuitively, is it a mitzvah to be an orev or not? I'm sure each and every one of you would say, of course it's a mitzvah. And I really think so. It is a mitzvah. So what's wrong with arvis? So in Kallah, when we learned Dina arvis, I explained, knowing the nature of people and the reality. Every orev that signs arvis very much hopes I will never need to pay. And we really hope that the borrower will pay. And when that happens, the borrower did not pay. The orev is not only disappointed, he is angry. And he will do everything to try to wiggle out of the arvis. And he will come with all kinds of strange arguments, and some of them I will discuss in the coming few minutes. Nobody likes to pay a loan that he never received. Another person got money, and I am required to pay. He very much hopes that he won't have to pay. And sometimes the only reason he signs is because he's in an unpleasant situation. He knows the borrower. and he's ashamed to say, I don't want to be an arvis. Because the borrower says, I'm not asking you for money. I'm not asking you for money. I will pay. And most times when you chas ma'arvis, you're not really up to it. And you hope you won't have to pay. And then when the lender says, you promise, give me money, he will do everything to wriggle out of the arvis and to put up arguments. I didn't mean it. Did you ask him to pay? Did you call him to Beis Din? Did you take him to court? Did you threaten him? And if at the end of the day he will need to pay, he will never forgive the borrower. Why did you get me into this situation? Why didn't you pay? Korav adovar, that is marbe sino, tachas ahava, and he will try not to pay, and if he doesn't pay, that is a chashash gezel, and that is why Chazal, with their ultimate wisdom, say, be careful. And whenever people ask me, should I be a orev? I say, bear in mind that you will never get this money back. Are you willing to pay? Bear in mind that in all likelihood, this will be a matana. Because, okay, but the lender has more reason to believe that he will get paid than the orev. Because the orev is dependent in two sides. And the orev will have taraimis on the lender. Did you go after the loiva? The lender will. But the lender, instead of going after the loiva, has an easy way out. And he could go to the orev. And the lender will tell the orev, I tried. And the orev will say, maybe you didn't try hard enough. And that's why when a lender lends money, he is more likely to get his money back than an orev, and the same applies to the lender. But the lender, standing against the borrower knows, I'm giving money. But when the borrower asks the orev is in a more unpleasant situation because the borrower tells the orev, I'm not asking for your money. Just sign. I will pay. I promise I'll pay. So for the lender, it is far easier to say, I don't have money. The orev can't say, I don't have money. Because the borrower tells the orev, I'm not asking for money. You're a friend. Just sign. Trust me. So the lender is not in that unpleasant position as the orev. The lender could always say, I don't have liquidity. I don't have money. But the orev, the borrower tells him, I'm not asking for your money. All you need to do is sign. And because Chazal know that in all likelihood this will not end good. You will be angry at the lender. You're going to be angry at the borrower. You'll never forgive neither him nor him. And that is why don't do it. You could only do it if you bear in mind, if it comes to be and the borrower didn't pay, I wholeheartedly will pay this loan. I was an orev more than once, and almost always I needed to pay, and I never got my money back. And I didn't have taraimis, neither on the lender nor the borrower, because if I would have taraimis, I would not sign. And that is what Chazal are talking about. And that is Rabbeinu Yonah. I don't remember the lashon of Rabbeinu Yonah, but there's a beautiful Rabbeinu Yonah on Mishlei, Perish Rabbeinu Yonah on Mishlei, and I want you to look it up. And Rabbeinu Yonah, in his beautiful language, that is what he explains in Perek Vav. Do we have it? Let's check the Goan. Maybe there's something in the Goan as well. So that is about arvis. Arvis could be a great mitzvah, and the orev has the same mitzvah as the malva, but there's a condition. It is a mitzvah. Have a look. I trust you if you find something. Arvis could be a great mitzvah, but in most cases, it's not going to have a happy end, and either you will try not to pay, and you will get into a chashash gezel, you will pay, and you won't forgive the lender Why did you come after me? You never gave this money. I didn't see this money. Why do I need to pay? And you won't forgive the borrower. You promised to pay, and you disappointed me, and you know that I never intended to pay this money. I just signed because I trusted you. And in those situations, which are most cases, don't be a orev. Now, two interesting questions that I dealt with, and they both appear in Shalosh Teshuvos Minchas Osher Chelik Beis. Person took a loan, and his friend signed arvis. It was a 6-month loan. And the lender ignored, and he never turned to the borrower, time is up, pay. 3 years later, he turns to the orev. The borrower didn't pay, please pay up. And the orev says, what are you talking about? I don't even remember this loan. And he takes out a shtar. But the orev says, this was long ago. When was payday? 2.5 years ago. But the lender says, what's the difference? You signed arvis. And this is not conditional. If he doesn't pay, you need to pay up. Semen Kuf Lamed Aleph, the Torah quotes the Ramban. And the Ramban says that person gave a loan, and the orev told the lender, time is up, ask the borrower to pay. And the lender did not ask the borrower to pay. And after the elapse of time, the lender comes to the orev. And the orev argues, but I told you a year ago you should turn to the loiva, and you didn't. Maybe then he had money. But I can't take responsibility forever. Money comes, money goes, the wheel of fortune is constantly turning. So I took arvis for 6 months.
No statute of limitations at all, is there?
So the Ramban says arvis is forever. Even though the orev did remind the borrower, the lender, time is up, and asked the orev to give. And the Beis Yosef is so amazed by the psak of the Ramban, he says, I don't believe the Ramban ever signed up on this. V'lav gushpanke the Ramban chosim Allah, and he is quoting a Gemara in Bava Kama, Daf Chof Beis. Lav gushpanke the marber of Ashi chosim Allah. And the Ramban says, the Beis Yosef says, doesn't make sense. Especially if the orev turned to the malva and he reminded him, it is the time for the loiva to pay. Ask him. If he doesn't pay, I will. And the malva was Pesicha. He did nothing. The orev could say, I no longer bear responsibility. I think I saw you yesterday sitting right there, right? And we spoke about Loisia Loikenaisha. The Loisia Loikenaisha is only when you know he doesn't have money. And the orev tells the lender, at that time he had money. I know he had money. Why didn't you ask for your loan back? And therefore, I no longer bear responsibility. And the Beis Yosef says, no, he is poto. The Taz agrees with the Beis Yosef. The Shulchan Aruch, unlikely, this is very uncommon, but the Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Lamed Aleph writes, Tzorech lehisyashev b'davar, and that is very uncommon, because Shulchan Aruch is always very decisive, either aloche keproini or aloche kolmoini. In the Beis Yosef, he argues very forcefully against the Ramban, but in the Shulchan Aruch, he's afraid of the Ramban. Everybody is afraid of the Ramban. And the Beis Yosef should come against the Ramban when there is no Rishon that disagrees with the Ramban. Tzorech liyaseh b'davar. But most of the later poskim, including the Taz and the Shach, say halochi keBeis Yosef, especially hamoitzi mechaveroi olav haraya, and he no longer bears responsibility. However, the Pesicha quotes the Chacham Tzvi. And the Chacham Tzvi says, a Kabbalan has a different halacha. So, I don't know whether everybody knows the difference between orav and kablan. Standard arvis, you could only turn to the orav after you tried with the loiva. Trying with the loiva is not only asking him to pay. Trying the loiva is calling him to court and to beis din. It is only if you did everything to collect your money from the loiva and you were unsuccessful, only then could you turn to the orav. And orav kablan, it is the benefit of the lender to turn to whom of the two parties he wishes. And he could turn to the orav even before he turns to the loiva. That is a kablan. Every gemach today insists to have an orav kablan. And justly so. Because the gemach doesn't want to go to court and doesn't want to go to the basin and doesn't want to get into a long legal process to collect his money. And therefore, all arevim today are essentially arevim kablonim. We don't have time to go into the details. What makes a kablan? That's lengthy. So the Pesicha quotes the Chacham Tzvi regarding this question. The orev turn to the lender. Collect your money and do it now because time is up. The lender did not do so. The Pesicha says he no longer bears responsibility and the orev is potter. Pesicha quotes the Chacham Tzvi. Kablan is different. But on the other hand, Chacham Tzvi says that the Pesicha's opinion applies even if the orev did not remind the lender, collect your money. The orev could say, that's not my responsibility. It is your responsibility. This is a 6-month loan, and you should have collected the money after 6 months. If you didn't do so, I am no longer responsible. So on one hand, the Chacham Tzvi makes it easier for the orev, even if the orev wasn't involved at all. I don't need to remind the lender to collect his money. Why do I need to be there? That's your responsibility. And if you weren't Tovea the loiva when time was up, I no longer bear responsibility. But on the other hand, a kablan has a different din. And this was a question in my beis din. It took years for the lender to turn to the orev, even though it was a short-term loan. The orev wasn't involved at all between the lender and borrower. So unlike the case that Ramban and the two on the Pesicha deals with, the orev didn't turn to the lender and say, collect your money. So that would be a matter of machlokes between the poskim. On the other hand, he was a kablan. I never understood the argument that kablan would be different. Why would he be different? The only difference between an orev and a kablan is, could you turn to the kablan directly before you turn to the orev? But essentially, it is the same. The kablan got no money, and the orev got no money. And I was happy to find in the Shoyal HaMeshiv, and I learned a lot of Shoyal HaMeshiv. The Yosef Shol Natanson was one of my young, I'm not using the right word, I know, but it's a popular word. The Yosef Shol Natanson was the hero of my youth. And when I was a bocher, I spent many hours learning Shalas Teshuvas, Shoyal HaMeshiv. And recently I gave a shiur on the yahrzeit of the Shoyal HaMeshiv about his derech and about his greatness, and that became viral, that shiur, and many thousands of people listened to that shiur. So anyway, Shoyal HaMeshiv Medur Aleph Chelek Gimel Siman Kuf Samach Beis says, as I felt, there is no difference between an orev and a kablan. And according to the Pesicha, if the orev bears no responsibility, if the lender didn't collect his money on time, there's no difference between an orev and a kablan. And my psak was, because this is gross negligence. Years have transpired. And in the case I dealt with, the orev argued, I knew that the borrower is getting a mortgage. and I relied on that mortgage. He collected a mortgage, he refinanced his home, and he made millions of dollars, and that was my cheshbon. I knew that the loan was a short-term loan because I knew that he is having money. But now years have transpired. Do you expect me to be responsible after 20 years? And therefore my psak was that the arv is exempt and he no longer bears responsibility, and that is total negligence from the malva. You knew that you have an arv, and you shouldn't expect him to bear responsibility forever, even though the malva said, I was not aware of that mortgage. No difference. When time came, you should have collected that money, and that was my psak. Minchas Osher, Shal Shuvas Chelik Beis, if you want to look it up, I think it's Kuf Yudalet, but I'm not sure. I don't know. Halacha is not always very decisive, and when people ask me questions of that nature, how much time, sometimes I respond, 10 o'clock, 13 minutes, and 21 halakim. But that is language we use only once a month. And it's the language we use on Shabbos. So it has nothing to do with money. That is Berachas HaChodesh. But it's not the language of halacha. And therefore, this psak I could give only in extremes. If it would be a month, 2 months, 3 months later, my psak would be different. But if years transpired, this is something extreme. People should be aware, as I said before, money comes, money goes. And there's the wheel of fortune. So many people had money and they no longer have. So many people didn't have, and Baruch Hashem, they have. All of you should be blessed with Parnasa B'Revach U'B'Kavod. So this is negligence mitzad ha'malva. I am an Orav, but I can't be an Orav forever. And in this case, he argued, the only reason I took arvis is because I knew that he's refinancing his home and he's going to have money to pay. The malva has no responsibility to the Orav, but the responsibility of the Orav has its limitations. Not that the malva is responsible to the Orav, but the responsibility of the Orav in his pledge to the malva should, you use your common sense. It's not logical that it should be forever. You know, the loiva needs to pay, and there's no statute of no loan limitation of zman for the loiva. You got money, you need to pay it back. But the Orav is different. I didn't get any money, and I relied on certain circumstances when I agreed to be an Orav. And those circumstances have changed, as they always change with time. That is one question. The Orav doesn't force the malva anything. The Orav just says, if you decided not to be teveya, don't come to me. It's not the Orav imposing on the malva to ask the loiva to pay. The Orav says, I don't care. If you want to be nice, but I no longer bear responsibility. So I think to prevent a situation that the Orav wants to impose on the malva to ask for money, no. The Orav has no interest at all imposing anything on the malva, but the Orav simply says, if you expect me to pay, then you need to be sensible. And I took responsibility for a 6-month loan, not for a 10-year loan. If the malva tried, the loiva didn't pay up, and the malva didn't turn to the Orav for years, that is even worse. You knew that he's not paying. Why didn't you turn to me immediately? That makes the malva's case even a weaker case. You knew he's not paying. You asked for his money, and you didn't notify me. Maybe I would turn to the loiva, and the loiva would be unpleasant to me, and I would tell him, listen, if you don't pay, I'll need to pay, and he would have paid. So if the malva tried with the loiva and he didn't pay, that makes his case even a flimsier case, You should have turned to me at the time, and you didn't. So, Rabbi Say, Dina Momenis, that is the nature of Dina Momenis, and I'm happy with this argumentation developing. That is the nature of Dina Momenis. Unlike Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Natilas Yadayim, you need to apply your, not only seichel, but your heart and your mind, the sense of justice, what's right and wrong, and common sense. And I think both heart and mind would argue in this situation, you cannot expect the Orav to be an Orav forever. If the loan was limited in time, you should have collected your money, and if you couldn't, you should have turned to me. Arvis is not forever.
I'll have a curious question. Is the Rav aware that they went to in a gemach situation, they went to the Arev to collect from the Arev? Is that Meisim B'chol Yom here? The Leiva defaulted on the Mesholach. He defaulted on his 10,000 shekel loan. And they went to the Arev and they attached his bank account. What's the Lemaisa here?
The Lemaisa is, every Orav today is Orav Kablan, and Afal Piken, this is another Psak Mechudish, my Psak. Unlike in the days of Chazal, in which the lender has the right to turn to the Orav even before he turns to the Leiva, and that is the din of a Kablan, I think in our days, no, the halacha is different. Because arvis is so common, and anan sahadi, that even though I am a Kabbalan, but at least ask the loiva to pay. I do not expect you to go to court for a long process of years and try to collect the money. No, that's when I'm a Kabbalan. But you do need to ask the loiva to pay. So a Kabbalan in Shulchan Aruch, you could turn to the Kabbalan without even talking to the loiva, and there's a huge dealing in the Paiskim. The lender collected money from the Orev, and the Orev did not tell the loiva, I paid your loan. And after years, the Orev turns to the loiva, and that is the same question the other way around, and the loiva says, why did you wait for years? 10 years ago I had money. I would be happy to pay you, but why did you wait so long till you tell me that you paid the malva? Another question, the malva collected money from the Orev. The Orev didn't notify the loiva. And then this thief, the malva, collected money from the loiva as well. And now the loiva comes to the Orev comes to the loiva, I paid your loan. And the Orev says, you didn't tell me you paid the loan because I also paid the loan. And in that case, the Orev is a Pesicha, and the loiva says, you should have notified me immediately that you paid that loan because the malva, after collecting from you, turned to me and he collected from me as well.
So the loiva takes the Arev to an entire to pay him back.
Yes. So arvis sometimes becomes very complicated. Of course, he doesn't have money, but he still has liability. He's like the loiva. You don't have now, but you still are chayiv to pay.
Is the loiva Russia if he doesn't? Arev Russia? He's a Kabbalan, he's in his shoes. Why not? The Rav is thinking about the answer.
Rabbi Yosef, when I came yesterday into the room, I was looking for you. And I didn't realize you, so I'm happy you stood up with this question. Happy to see you here again, as every year. Where does Dina de Malchuse come in? If I'm not mistaken, I think we had the topic of Dina de Malchuse one of the years ago, right? In this. You don't remember?
Here, I do remember. Not here because we were too nervous to go into that because it's a touchy subject. And everything's videoed.
Okay, it's a fascinating sugya, but Dina de Malchuse does not affect Dina Halvoa, and there is no statute of limitation in bein malva leloiva. And if you borrowed money,
What about bankruptcy?
forever you need to pay. Bankruptcy is valid al pi halacha. And I paskin that bankruptcy is valid al pi halacha.
Proof is printed here.
It's also printed in my sefer.
Yes.
So I can't retract that. Okay, so one more question I dealt with, and that'll be Bekitz and Nimrats, because I think my time is up, and it's 1:30. So I'll just share the question and my psak without going into detail, and I'm sure this is going to cause a lot of discussion. Person signed arvis, and then the malva turns to the Orav. The Levi didn't pay. To his horror, he suddenly discovers this wasn't a Gemilas Chasodim, but a Heter Iska. And this loan wasn't a Tmimis Dika loan. The Malva suggested to the Levi, I will lend you money. You should be able to invest the money with me for a 20% return, but I want to Orav that if you don't pay, he will pay for you. And this younger man who was a ben Torah turned to his friend who was a ben Torah as well, and he doesn't have money, and he signed arvis. And then when he is demanded to pay, he says, just a minute, this was a business deal? I'm an avrech. And my friend is an avrech, a koil guy. I thought he doesn't have money to pay the groceries, he doesn't have money to pay his rent, and we're B'nai Torah. We're here to help each other. If I would know this is a 20% return investment with a heterisk, I would never sign arvis. So, in what circumstances could a Orav get out of arvis arguing it's arvis betos? Mekach tois is valid in every transaction and any agreement between two parties. We find Kiddushei tois, Get betois, Mekach tois, any transaction, any agreement between two parties, tois would invalidate it. But the Ramon Siman Lamed Gimel says it is very hard to get out of arvis. If we were paskin that a Orav could get out of arvis by iron tois, there would be no arvis at all. And every Orav would find excuses. If I would know you don't have money, if I would know you're such a bad guy, if I would know that you took a loan from another person 2 years ago and you didn't, I wouldn't sign arvis. So the Ramah makes it very difficult for an Orav to get out of arvis. However, in Siman Lamed Gimel he does write, Ele be'umdena de muchach. So if it's a umdena de muchach, just like any other agreement and any other eschayvis, if it's a tois, it's not valid. And in this case, I give a very clear psak. This arvis is totally invalid because both parties, the malva and the loiva, were not honest towards the Orav. Both parties should have notified the Orav what this deal is about. And a ben Torah would never sign arvis if he knows this is a 20% investment, and as we all know, 20% interest investments are never paid back, and they always fail. And this is an opportunity for me just to say, and to our vast community, this happens again and again and again. Every few years, there's a wizard of ours in our communities that has a marvelous investment. You can't lose money. Right now in Ramot, there was a tragedy. A guy sold a gold mine in Ethiopia. Every sensible person knows if you're talking about a gold mine in Africa, run away. Run away. Don't even talk about it. And this person was smart. He said, I'm not asking any avrech for money. Just take a mortgage on your house and give me that money. Nobody needed to pay a dime. Hundreds of avrechim took mortgages on their homes, and they're all losing their homes now because they're still looking for that gold in Ethiopia.
Really? It doesn't exist?
No, it doesn't exist. No, there's nothing about it. So, every few years, I had a din Torah, and this was the strangest din Torah we ever had between a Baal Tshuva, a Bresler Baal Tshuva, and a Rosh Kollel. And this Baal Tshuva told the Rosh Kollel, I have an amazing business. And when I asked him, what was your proposal? He buys used cell phones and he sells them in Vietnam. Oh, you're business people. Does it sound viable? Does it sound good, buying used cell phones and selling them in Vietnam? And he promised the Rosh Kollel, you can't lose money. And the Rosh Kollel empties out his pockets with tzetalach, little tzetalach. 3 months, 15% interest. 2 months, 10% interest. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that he collected from Nadvonim, and he invested it in this unbelievable business that can't lose money. And I told the Rosh Kollel, if you would have an investment that can't lose money, he wouldn't be late a half hour to Beis Din, and he said he was stuck in a bus in a pkak. The police would close the road before our Beis Din, and a helicopter made of pure gold would land on the road before our Beis Din, and our wizard would walk out, bekovet gadol, and he would give you all your profits. If you would have an investment that can't lose money. You're stupid enough to believe that any investment can't lose money, and you all know, the greater the profit, the greater the risk. So it's about time that the Haredi community stops being fools and investing money in crazy investments and in promises that are never fulfilled. So teach your children, teach your friends. I'm sure no one sitting in this room needs my advice, but your children probably do. So teach your children and teach your kids, before they invest money, they should discuss it with their parents. Sometimes children don't want to discuss with their parents what they do with their money, but it is important. So anyway, regarding the question in arvis, it was clear to me that this avrech would never sign arvis, and both parties were dishonest by making an avrech sign arvis without disclosing to him what this is about, and therefore it's an arvis betois, and I pater the order from orders as chayvesen.
Okay, everybody say. The questions could be asked here up front.